Bartolo Longo had been a man of the cloth, once filled with fervent faith and boundless devotion. He believed his calling was pure, to serve God and lead souls to salvation. But within him stirred a quiet storm, one that questioned, doubted, and demanded to see what could only be believed. It was that hunger for understanding that led him down a road darker than he could ever have imagined. When he left the priesthood, he did not leave the search for truth. He wandered through philosophies and forbidden teachings, desperate to grasp the mysteries of life and death. Voices whispered that true enlightenment lay not in prayer, but in power. And slowly, Bartolo listened. He joined circles of spiritists, occultists, and those who promised him hidden wisdom. They spoke of freedom from divine law, of mastering unseen forces, and he, still wearing the shadow of his priestly pride, accepted their promises. But with every ritual he attended, every invocation he whispered, the warmth of faith left him a little more. His heart grew cold, his eyes heavy with shadows. The peace that had once filled him during Mass was replaced by anxiety, torment, and unseen whispers that followed him even in dreams. At first, he called them spirits of knowledge. Later, he began to fear they were something else entirely. Night after night, the whispers grew louder. "You are ours now." The words came from nowhere and everywhere, slithering through his mind. He awoke sweating, the air thick with dread. His friends saw the change, his pale face, his trembling hands, his sudden fits of rage or despair. Madness, they called it. Possession, some whispered. But Bartolo himself no longer knew where the line between mind and spirit began. One night, as he walked alone through the empty streets of Naples, the weight of his choices crushed him. The world felt hollow, God distant, his soul fractured. He stood on the edge of a hill and looked down at the dark city below, thinking that perhaps ending his life would end the torment. And then, through the roar of his own thoughts, came a single gentle voice, soft but undeniable. "Return to me." He froze. It was not a whisper of madness this time, not a voice from the abyss. It was clear, warm, and filled with mercy. Bartolo fell to his knees and wept like a child. "I have gone too far," he cried. "I have betrayed you, I have lost my soul." But the voice answered again, quieter still. "Even from the depths I can raise you." In that moment, Bartolo felt something shift deep within him, a light breaking through the storm. He stumbled to a small chapel nearby, its door half broken, its altar covered in dust. There, before a statue of the Virgin Mary, he collapsed. His body trembled, his heart shattered, but for the first time in years, he prayed. He begged for forgiveness, not expecting it, but needing to believe it could exist. As he prayed, the darkness that had followed him began to fade. He felt it, an invisible chain breaking, a weight lifting. And in that emptiness, peace began to flow. The whispers that had tormented him were gone, replaced by silence, sacred, healing silence. From that day, Bartolo Longo's life changed completely. He renounced all practices of darkness and devoted himself to acts of light. He began helping the poor, teaching children, and comforting those who suffered. He realized that the truest power was not found in secrets or rituals, but in compassion. He dedicated his life to the Virgin Mary, building the great shrine of Our Lady of the Rosary in Pompeii, a place for the broken to be restored, just as he had been. People who came to Pompeii spoke of feeling something in the air, a sense of peace that words could not describe. Some said they saw Bartolo himself praying in silence long after his death, his hands clasped, his eyes full of gratitude. They believed he had been chosen as a living testimony that even the most lost soul can find redemption. In his writings, Bartolo confessed that the path back to light was not easy. He battled guilt, fear, and memories of the voices that had once claimed him. But each time he felt the darkness near, he would hold his rosary and whisper, "No soul is beyond mercy." As the years passed, he became known not for the sins of his past, but for the miracle of his transformation. The man who once served the abyss became a bridge to heaven for countless others. He had seen hell, yes, but he had also seen what love could do when freely given. When Bartolo's final day came, he was calm. The room filled with the scent of lilies, and those around him said they saw him smile as though seeing something beautiful beyond the veil. His last words were a whisper of faith and hope. From the abyss to heaven. And as his soul left the earth, it carried with it the eternal truth he had lived to share. That even those who fall deepest can still rise higher than ever before, if only they reach toward the light. Dove, Years after Bartolo Longo's passing, the Valley of Pompeii became a living testament to his redemption, not just a holy place, but a heartbeat of mercy echoing across generations. Pilgrims continued to arrive from every corner of the world, carrying their pain, their doubts, their brokenness. They came seeking healing, and somehow, as they stepped into the shrine he had built, something invisible touched them, a peace that seemed to flow straight from heaven. Many said they could feel Bartolo's spirit still walking those halls, gentle and unseen. At night, when candles flickered low and the bells stopped ringing, some swore they heard a quiet voice in the still air whispering, "Do not give up, grace is waiting." Stories began to spread, of a man who came drunk and bitter, ready to end his life, but who left kneeling and weeping, clutching a rosary. Of a young woman burdened by guilt who claimed she saw Bartolo in a dream, telling her, "Your sins are not chains, but doors to humility." Of a dying child who, while praying, said he saw a man in white standing beside his bed, smiling with compassion. The people of Pompeii called it the miracle of the ex-priest, not one moment, but a living, breathing miracle that never stopped. For Bartolo's story had become something far greater than the man himself. It was proof that no one is too far gone, that even from the deepest darkness, light can rise. As decades passed, scholars came to study his life, trying to understand how a man once lost in occult despair could become a saintly figure of compassion. They read his journals, the confessions of a tortured soul reborn through faith, and wept. His words carried an honesty that pierced through every generation. "I was chained by the voices of pride and sin, but mercy shattered them. God does not love us for our purity. He purifies us through his love." Those words would later be carved into the walls of the shrine, where millions would read them and feel something stir within their hearts. Bartolo's work outlived him. The shrine became a sanctuary for orphans, widows, the sick, and the forgotten. Hospitals rose, schools flourished, and prayers continued day and night. The poor found shelter, the lost found purpose, and the proud found humility. Even the priests who came after him said that when they prayed in solitude, they sometimes felt a hand on their shoulder, firm but kind, as though reminding them, "You serve because you were saved." And perhaps the greatest miracle of all was not the healings or the visions, but the simple truth that lingered in every heart that entered Pompeii, that redemption was not a distant dream, but a choice, one that could be made even after walking through the gates of despair. Time went on, centuries turned, but the name Bartolo Longo became synonymous with hope. His image, once that of a man who had fallen from grace, transformed into a symbol of divine mercy, a man who had not been destroyed by his sin, but transformed by his repentance. And on quiet nights, when the moonlight washed over the shrine and the bells rang softly in the wind, pilgrims still whispered the words he left behind, a prayer, a promise, and a truth that can never die. O ChatGPTs. As the centuries passed, the legacy of Bartolo Longo grew brighter, not as a tale of perfection, but as the story of a man who found grace in ruin. His name was spoken in whispers and in prayers by sinners and saints alike, as if invoking him meant calling upon hope itself. The Valley of Pompeii became sacred ground, not because of wealth or relics, but because it pulsed with the living spirit of forgiveness that he had left behind. Every dawn, when sunlight poured through the stained glass of the shrine, it painted the marble floors with rivers of color, gold, crimson, blue, as though heaven itself was touching earth. Pilgrims who entered weary and afraid would stand still, their faces lifted toward the light, and many said they could feel something deep within, a peace that could not be explained. A young priest once wrote that he felt Bartolo's presence while walking through the shrine at night. It was not a ghost, he said, but a sense that someone still prays here, someone who prays for those who cannot pray for themselves. And indeed, many believe that Bartolo, even in eternity, had not stopped his mission. He walked unseen among the lost, guiding them toward the same mercy that had saved him. People began to visit not only seeking miracles, but to learn how to forgive themselves. They came to understand that holiness was not being spotless, but being transformed. Mothers came praying for their children. Prisoners sent letters asking for his intercession, and men who had lived far from faith found in his story a reflection of their own longing for redemption. In time, the church recognized what the people had known all along, that Bartolo Longo's journey from darkness to light was not just personal, but universal. His beatification was not merely an honor, but a declaration to the world that God's mercy has no limits, and no fall is too great for grace to reach. Now his image stands beside the altar, eyes lifted toward the Virgin Mary, his hands clasped around a rosary, the same symbol that had once pulled him from despair. Beneath his statue are the words he once spoke before the crowd. Whoever spreads the rosary is saved. But even greater is the one who lives it, not with words, but with love. And yet, even as the centuries turned, those who came to Pompeii said the truest miracle was not in the statues or the relics, but in what they felt, that invisible warmth that stirs the heart, that whisper that echoes when all hope seems gone. You are not too far. Come home. The air of Pompeii still carries that message. The bells still ring not for the perfect, but for the broken. And every time a sinner kneels, every time a heart opens to forgiveness, the story of Bartolo, Longo, begins again. He lives not in history, but in every soul that dares to rise after falling, in every human being who walks out of the abyss and lifts their eyes toward heaven. O ChatGPT. And so, long after his body had returned to the earth, the spirit of Bartolo Longo continued to move through the world like a quiet wind, unseen, yet deeply felt. His shrine stood as both monument and mirror, reflecting the journey of every soul that entered its doors, from despair to peace, from guilt to grace. Each candle that flickered within its walls was a story, a soul crying out for light. And as the flames trembled and danced, it was said that Bartolo's spirit walked among them, gathering every whispered prayer, every tear, every plea for mercy, and carrying them upward, as if he still served as a bridge between heaven and those who could no longer lift their own hearts. One evening, centuries after his death, an old monk who kept the shrine alone through the night heard footsteps echo softly through the hall. Thinking it was another pilgrim who had stayed behind, he followed the sound. But when he reached the altar, he found no one there, only the faint scent of lilies and a soft light surrounding the statue of the Virgin. He knelt, trembling, and heard a whisper deep within his soul. Do not tire of mercy. From that night forward, the monk said, he never doubted that Bartolo was still watching, still guiding, still interceding for every heart burdened by its own darkness. As time went on, the world around the shrine changed, wars raged, empires fell, and generations forgot the old ways. Yet still pilgrims came. They came not for spectacle, but for solace. The lost, the weary, the ones who thought themselves too far gone, they found something in that sacred valley that words could not describe. And every one of them, in some mysterious way, left lighter than they came. Scholars wrote of Bartolo as a psychological marvel, a symbol of the power of transformation. Theologians called him a mystic of redemption. But those who truly understood his legacy spoke of something simpler, that Bartolo Longo was a man who had fallen so far that only divine love could reach him, and that love had not only reached him, but made his fall the foundation of his faith. He had once served the abyss. Now he served heaven. And his message, his revelation, was not a sermon, but a living truth carved into the heart of humanity. There is no darkness that mercy cannot break. Even today, as dawn rises over Pompeii and sunlight floods the shrine, the world seems to pause for a moment, as if remembering the man who dared to believe that forgiveness could rebuild a life. The bells ring softly through the valley. Pilgrims lift their eyes toward the cross, toward the same heavens that once seemed closed to him. And somewhere beyond the veil of time, Bartolo Longo still prays, his voice joined with the chorus of every soul that found light after the storm.